Psalms. We have faithfully tried to been reading through the book of Psalms, and we are making our way. Soon we'll be finished with the first part, Psalm 1 through Psalm 50. This is High Mountain Presbyterian Church, and I'm Pastor Lou, and I'm glad to be here tonight on this Tuesday night. Spring seems to be approaching. The daffodils are leaping, and it's a good feeling. I don't want to be too weather-bound, but it feels good to feel that winter is receding and spring and new life will come again. We're going to wait to really get going until we have perhaps some of our regular people will come and join us in the Zoom conversation. If you're watching this and it's 7:30 on a Tuesday night, you can join in. You can join the Zoom conversation. All you have to do is send me an email at revlouis@aol.com, and I'll link you in. Here comes Barbara. Hello, Barbara. I'm going to arrange the view. Hi, Barbara. I don't know if you can hear me. You must be muted because I can't hear you. There you go.
One of these days I'll click all the buttons.
Well, as long as they work.
Put another button on.
Right. As long as they work in the end, that's what matters.
Goodness.
So you're not sitting there talking and nobody can hear you. How are you, Barbara?
I'm doing okay, I think. I was concerned. Is it possible to get COVID every month or so?
Yes.
I thought I had some symptoms, so I went to urgent care today because my cousin's staying over tomorrow, and my son and granddaughter are coming Saturday. But they said no, it's not. So they gave me some cough medicine and some prednisone. So at least I'm not going to affect anyone else or whatever. But does it ever end?
I don't think so. I remember the last time for me, it just was such a feeling of despair to test positive again, because it doesn't just affect my life, it affects my wife and all the visitors we were going to have and all the plans. I mean, everything is affected.
Not tell me about it. I know.
Although I didn't read.
Good.
I didn't read the full article, but I guess the National Health Agency is saying you don't have to isolate now. You don't have to isolate.
One day. And I said, after you're, as long as you're not a fever. Well, I never fevered either time.
Yeah.
That he had it. So I don't know.
Hi, Elaine.
There's Elaine.
Oh,
Hello.
looks like you're warm, Barbara.
Yeah, I have the doors open tonight.
Nice.
I was just saying I'm having company, but the way my condo is set up, I have screen sliders in the living room, kitchen, and bedroom all onto the screen. And when it's just me, I just open all the doors and it stays comfortable. But the other two bedrooms are stuck in the back, and I can't open windows. So I'm going to have to put the AC on when the company comes. So I'll enjoy the fresh air for one more night.
I was enjoying the fresh air today. We had the slider open in the back of the house, and oh my goodness, it was so
So good,
fresh.
didn't it?
Yeah, fresh and warm, and wow, it was
Windy.
beautiful. There's Judy. Hi, Judy.
Judy,
How are you?
hello.
Nice to see you this evening.
Yes, nice to see all of you. So is Debbie's not joining us
No,
tonight?
she's not
Yeah,
coming
so
tonight.
we're doing tomorrow.
Oh, that's right.
Right.
She's going to the mosque tonight.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay.
Elaine, can I ask you, before we get started, are you going to be around this weekend on Sunday? Because,
Yeah.
okay, if you are, then I think we'll do the ordination installation of,
Great.
of elders this coming Sunday, okay? And as
Good.
I said to Laura, we'll try to make it meaningful and profound, but not too long. Because, you know,
Oh, yeah.
the Presbyterian ordination service just drones on and on and on. So I
But
think,
that's not necessary, is it?
no, it is not. It is not necessary. So we'll do something, like I said, it's very meaningful, and certainly happy to participate in what it means to be ordained. And so we'll do that this coming Sunday.
Great. Am I the only
Miss-
one?
No, you're not the only one. Glenn was ordained already, but he'll still be installed, so he'll stand right with you. And Janet Watkins is not ordained, so she'll be ordained with you.
Okay.
I'll have to do the laying on of hands on my TV.
Yeah, that's right. I'll have to remember, you see, lay your hands on your television, right?
Please.
And as
No, that is such a wonderful part of it.
yeah,
I agree.
it is. So, all right, well, that's good. I'm looking forward to that. So how's Judy tonight?
Okay, looking forward always to Tuesday night to be with you guys.
Likewise.
Feel the same.
Yeah.
So
So where are you now?
what did you
What's
say?
on?
Oh, we're at Psalm 49. We are at Psalm 49. And I don't know, in reading through this, I have to say, I really like it. I like it. It's dreadful.
good.
It's dreadful in some ways because it delivers, you know, there's a lot of things that are in the Bible and from the culture and that are questionable. This one unfolds the basic truth of life. There's no disputing the truth that is talked about in this psalm. So I'm very anxious to have somebody read it, and then we can let it settle into our lives, what it says. Who's going to read?
I'll read, but I have this other Bible that has a different pronunciation, different
Okay.
wording.
I think we'll be able to follow along with you. We've done that before.
English is a second language. Okay. Psalm 49. To the chief musician, a psalm for the sons of Korah. Hear this, all ye people. Give ear, all ye inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor, together. My mouth shall speak of wisdom, and the meditation of my heart shall be of understanding. I will incline mine ear to a parable. I will open my dark saying upon the harp. Wherefore should I fear in the days of evil, when the iniquity of my deeds shall compass me about? They that trust in their wealth and boast themselves in the multitude of their riches, none of them can by any means redeem his brother, nor give to God a ransom for him. For the redemption of their soul is precious, and it ceaseth forever. That he should still live forever, and not see corruption. For he seeth that wise men die, likewise the fool and the brutish person perish, and leave their wealth to others. Their inward thought is that their houses shall continue forever, and their dwelling places to all generations. They call their lands after their own names. Nevertheless, man, being in honor, abideth not. He is like the beasts that perish. This their way is their folly, yet their posterity approve their sayings. Selah. Like sheep they are laid in the grave. Death shall feed on them, and the upright shall have dominion over them in the morning. and their beauty shall consume in the grave from their dwelling. But God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me, Selah. Be not thou afraid when one is made rich, when the glory of his house is increased. For when he dieth, he shall carry nothing away. His glory shall not descend after him. Though while he lived, he blessed his soul, and made me praise thee when thou doest well to thyself. He shall go to the generation of his fathers, they shall never see light. Man that is in honor and understandeth not is like the beasts that perish.
So did you get all that?
So,
Yeah.
My comment is the first one is an instruction on the limits of wealth.
Right. Yeah, and I think it certainly is that. It's a message of caution to those who think that your life could be lived in pursuit of wealth and it will be meaningful. We have the saying, you can't take it with you. This psalm goes a little further than that in terms of trying to explain that you can achieve high standard, right? I like especially it says, they build these houses. We humans build these houses and we even name the houses after ourselves, thinking that somehow that's going to reverse the trend of what is our lot.
Trump Tower.
There you go.
You always have to get us in trouble, don't you?
Yes. I was thinking, we had a sign at our house, it said Camp Fernie.
Yeah.
And my son took the sign and he now has it at his house. And when I moved to Cedar Crest, I asked my granddaughter, I said, what am I can't call it Camp Fernie. She said, well, call it Casita Fernie because it's a small house.
Oh.
But I'm thinking, wait a minute, here I am naming this house after myself.
It's after
How
him.
vain.
Yeah. I'm not sure, the psalmist is not necessarily criticizing naming your house after yourself. But if you're trying to do it in an effort to preserve your memory, as a younger man, when I first was out of seminary, I lived in a house that was right next door to a cemetery. And my kids played in the cemetery. It had a slanted paved road on it, and they used to get on their little ridey cars, and they would go zipping down the road. And it was an interesting place to live. We called it the rock garden. We told the kids it was the rock garden.
What it was?
Yeah, so yeah, they could go play in the rock garden. But as you walk past these stones and the engravings on them, and I mean, for a while, right? They preserve the memory for a while, but then the people who remember them also are gone.
Yep.
And when the people who remember them are gone, they're gone. And I don't know, it was always a very, still is. It's a very deep thought. This is a very deep thought this psalmist is writing about. And the commentators make the case that this is not a Hebrew psalm. It's not sectarian. In fact, in the beginning it says, "Listen, all you inhabitants of the world." This is beyond the myopics.
I know, rich and poor.
That's right. This is everybody. This is everybody. This is something you can say which is true about every single human being. And I'm still not exactly sure. You see the phrase Sheol is in here. In verse 14, like sheep, in my translation it says, like sheep shipped to Sheol, death shall graze on them. And that's the contrast to those who in folly think that they can survive because of their worthiness. there's very clearly here this concept that for the Hebrew people and for this period of time, their longing ultimately was not for life after death. Sheol is sleep. It's a place where you go to sleep. It's the basis of that phrase that you'll see in cemeteries, R.I.P., rest in peace. Death is seen in these ancient times, death is seen as an end to life's struggles. It is peace at last. And there's some sense in which in Sheol, if you've lived a decent life, there will be a kind of a sense of you sleeping with your ancestors, that your name is not cut off from the lineage. If you were considered a terrible person, you weren't buried. Your body was left on the surface of the ground. And the crows and the jackals and the...
Just like an animal, huh?
Yeah, you were treated. And the Hebrew concept is, it's almost very contemporary, because the idea was that when you die, the elements of your body go back into the great circle of life. Mm-hmm. You become part of, we joke about pushing up daisies, but your body participates still in the whole miracle of life itself. But if you are, bad seed, and you live your life, they don't want your body in the ground to further contaminate the cycle of the earth. They don't want you back again. So but even with that, the writer says, but listen to what it says. You're gonna enter, if all goes well, you enter into your ancestor generation, but there are those, they will never see light again. It's a dark place. It's not a bad place, but it's a dark place. And I think there's two lessons here. One is the caution about thinking that the accumulation of wealth is a worthy goal in this short period of time that we have on this life. Instead, I don't know exactly how to phrase it, but to live your life without that foolish idea, and therefore live a life worthy of the kind of truth about what life is like. If you keep your own humanity in front of you, it can keep you out of a lot of trouble. You don't end up pursuing foolish ideas in life, and you pursue those that are worthy. And in the middle, the whole talk about ransom is you can't buy your way out of this. You can't buy your way out of it for your brother or your sister either. It's a happy thought, right?
Reading it after having been going through this webinar on the spirituality of fundraising and reading Henry Nouwen's book about spirituality of fundraising. And what I think his comment, and also I'm hearing here, is it is not that money is the root of all evil, but it's your relationship to money. And how do you look at the money? Is it yours, or are you a steward for God's work in this world? And, I remember reading many years ago one of Henry Nouwen's books about, I guess I always had thinking that all rich people are greedy uncaring people. And, his comment was, we are all needy.
Yeah.
We have different needs. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of, I really should get the program that you're going through, because it sounds like it would really reinforce a lot of things that I've tried to hold on to in my life as a pastor. And, sometimes I bought into these fundraising campaigns for churches that just makes me feel like a sleazy car salesman. I really don't like the gimmicks. I don't like the tricks, and we would do door-to-door campaigns where we would go out and knock on people's door and sit in their dining room, and I just never really bought into that idea. But the one thing that I have held on to was, there was a short stewardship training that I went to, and they said that, for pastors, the encouragement is to help people put money in its place. Mm-hmm. If you can, money is always crossing boundaries. It's always taking over people's lives. It's always promising what it cannot deliver. Mm-hmm. And that if the encouragement to giving is, and I just love the phrase, putting money in its place. If we can figure out how to keep money in its place, it can do a world of good. So being rich, there's nothing evil about being rich. It's just in earning lots of money and having a goal of earning lots of money. The problem is that most people, even if it works out, they lose sight and money takes over their life. Mm-hmm. But who was it? Templeton, who said, earn all the money you can so that you can give all the money that you can. Mm-hmm. And that's putting money in its place. Mm-hmm. It cannot add the things that it promises.
Isn't that a contrast between someone like Elon Musk and that woman last week who gave so much money, what was it, to the medical school, and that kids could go there tuition free? I can't remember her name, but there was a whole article about her in the paper.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money. Yeah. And it would really...
Well, Bezos' wife has been giving hundreds of millions of dollars. Is that who you're talking? I can't remember her name, but she's given hundreds of millions of dollars, a lot of it to small schools, and a lot of it to Habitat places too. But she has spent a lot of time trying to decide where the money should go. And, that's also, a difficult situation when there are so many needs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I agree that this is a very, very impactful and pertinent to our time psalm. And I remember reading it when I was very young and had young kids. And at that time, my husband was a professor. I was, actually, I had a little program in my house for after school kids.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And I wasn't making money and he wasn't making that much. And we're in Wyckoff and I was feeling very, poor. Mm-hmm. and jealous. I was jealous. These other women had their fur coats on. and they were talking to each other. And I was, kind of outside of it. And I don't know, it helped me a lot. This whole idea. I was like, okay, that's their focus. It's not mine, But living in that environment was not easy.
Right.
It isn't today either, but I'm in a whole different place in my life, so it's not,
I think we need reality checks all the time.
well, and I get them every time I go to Uganda. So,
Well, I do, yeah, absolutely. And, I feel it when I teach English to the people that are making $20 an hour.
immigrants, and yeah,
And and these are people who are, have steady jobs, not the homeless or those that are unemployed. So,
right.
but, we need a reality check, but, it's so easy to get in the bubble
Yeah.
of not realizing what else is out there and how people are really living. And, I certainly see it when I drive an hour away to Immokalee here and see the difference in people's situations. It is.
And there's a,
But you expose yourself to it, which lots of people don't.
right. And I think there's, I don't know, I guess maybe it's my age, but so I'm going to be 69, and wow, 69 is very different than 29. It is. And so I have this voice in me, maybe it's the approaching of wisdom in me, that tries to talk to myself and to say, life's time is fleeting. It is, it's fleeting. And don't waste 1 minute, don't waste one single minute of missing what is all around you, and thinking about how it would be so much better, like what? And it is why I miss the mission trips in the summertime, because they were my Uganda. I mean, that was my chance to go and dip my toe again into a deeper truth than the truth that surrounded my life here in Franklin Lakes. And I'm not jealous. I really am not now. I used to be jealous. But I am, I guess it's discouraged. I don't know what it is, because of the enormous amount of wealth that is shared. Like in my world, it's shared by what looks like all the world. Because it doesn't matter where you drive, north, south, east, or west, in the towns and villages. And my daughter Paige, she goes to teach in the school in D.C., and she's teaching a lot of immigrant children and a lot of very poor families. But she lives in an apartment on DuPont Circle, and she's getting to know some of the families that are in the area. And she's describing, like, she got a job babysitting or being a nanny on the weekends and in the evenings, and she described the house that the people live in is, to her, in her mind, it's bigger than the White House.
Yeah.
And it's in a development of houses that are the same size. And I feel those feelings she's describing whenever I go to a yacht club, and I see millions and millions of dollars tied up in, to me, what looks like these big ships that stay in dock all the time. So I'm just amazed. I guess the psalmist would write to me, and writes to my better self, and says, don't be deceived by what you see. Don't be deceived by it. And I consider myself, this is the self-talk, I consider myself to be a very wealthy man. I mean, I really do. I feel like...
Well, you are.
I am. I'm a very wealthy man. And especially if you measure wealth in terms of, what are you able to do? I can play music at my command. I can watch any television show I want to and hear stories. I have endless supply of books. I have public lands I can walk on. I am wealthy by, I don't know, 95% of the world's standards. I'm in that upper echelon. But
We
when
all
you,
are.
yeah, but when you just live in it,
Yep.
all that relativity disappears.
And some people definitely have more wealth in terms of money and things than you have in
Yes.
that little bubble that
Yes.
we're in.
I know.
So-
And it's, I'm actually having a little, like, mind bender because my children are turning out, have more wealth than I do.
My son, oh my goodness.
My son called me up the other day and he was saying that, they'd gotten this monstrous income tax return. He's got 3 kids, for Lord's sake. And he said, so we're going to go to England for a week. I go, well, good for you. Isn't that nice? Glad you can do that. And then my daughter, just a couple days later, tells me that she and her husband are taking off for Turks and Caicos, and they're going to go down there for a couple days. And it just seems like every time I turn around, my children are outpacing me in terms of what they evidently have as expendable cash. But I'm not poor. I'm a long way from poor. So, hi, Melinda.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
How are you?
Oh, good to see you.
Nice to see you again.
Good to be seen.
Yeah, good.
And be seen. We're talking about money and
Yeah.
wealth and how
Can I
we.
have some?
Wait, what did you say, Melinda?
I said, may I have some?
Oh, yes, yes. Sure.
It seems to come in and go out much faster than I imagined in my lifetime. You used to be able to put some aside, and now it seems like as soon as it comes into your hand, someone else is taking it out.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah, and that's the other side of that thing of what does it take to feel wealthy? What does it take to feel the sufficiency of life? Because it is like that. It's like that for many of us. The money comes in, the money goes out. And so we're reading Psalm 49, Melinda, and that's why we got on the subject of wealth. The main subject is life and death. And this solemn reminder that you cannot take anything of this life with you. It all, in the end, on the moment of your death, no longer belongs to you. And
Yeah.
even your efforts, if you will, to try, maybe you have enough money to give Harvard University a library and put your name on that. But eventually people will walk past that library and see your name and have no idea who you are or why your name is on that building. Ultimately, it always ends the same way, in oblivion.
Yes, I read something, someone posted, live your life while you're here. You can't take it with you. Stop trying to leave things for your grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Well,
Was that Joel Osteen trying to get your money?
yeah.
Oh, no, they say,
Yeah.
enjoy your life in your wonder years.
Right.
Enjoy your time while you're here. Don't sacrifice things that make you happy while you're here because you want to save it for your grandchildren and great-grandchildren.
Yeah. No, and maybe there's some balance in that too, because I think that there is something to be said for it depends on what you're doing with your money. Again, the warning here is to be very careful about what your money will not give you.
That's right.
It's incredible the value that money takes on when you give it away.
You can help, yes. You
it's
can do
just-
a lot of good with it.
Yeah, and especially if you give it so Elaine, every now and then from Mustard Seed, I hear a story that's really compelling to me. Like the kids at the Mustard Seed Academy need desks to do, and $100, what it will do. It's like, what? So, you know, it's like, you want to make more money? You want to make more money. Send it from the United States to Uganda. all of a sudden, it quadruples. Yeah, it quadruples in value. It's better than the NPR matching gift program because, you know.
Oh, I should quote you on that. That's really good.
Okay, go ahead.
More than triple.
Make your money grow, send it to Uganda.
Yeah, you can promise.
Be careful how you send it, though.
Yeah, you can promise 400% increase. I mean, imagine that. If you could buy stock that was immediately increased by 400%. It's for those that are interested in seeing how the sharing of money can multiply, not money. Sharing of money doesn't multiply money, but sharing of money multiplies the one thing that does remain for us, and that is the overwhelming feeling of having participated in a positive way in this world, of actually having the chance. You know, we talk a lot about, we want to make a difference. Well, you want to make a difference? Here's a way you can make a difference. And, you know, for years with kids especially, we would show them ways in which the little bit of money that they had could make a huge difference in the lives of someone else. It was astounding. And then when we would go to Appalachia, these kids, you know, their parents would pack their wallets with spending money, and they get up or down into Appalachia, and they're carrying around $100 in their wallet, and they go into these settings where $100 is like $1,000. And all of a sudden, their eyes are opened, and they look around, and they see a family, you know, that has nothing to sit on when they eat. And so we used to have this tradition. We would go to Walmart every night because there's absolutely nothing to do. Like, there is nothing to do. So we would drive into Walmart for any of them that wanted to go, and the first thing you know, these kids are pulling the money out of their wallet, and they're getting together, and they're buying a kitchen table for the family. And then they present it to the family, and they're weeping, you know? They're weeping with the power of what they have discovered they had.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I think that in some ways that's part of what the underlying wisdom of this text is, to cut through the deception of what matters in life. You know, what really does matter. And I do believe with all of my heart that what matters most is, I want to say, what you do with your money. I mean, if you want to multiply it, you want to find investments to multiply it, great. But then make sure that you don't let it take over in your life, and keep using it for what it needs, where it needs to go, and for the difference it can make, not just for the people who receive it, but for you. You know, to speak to the deeper center of who you are as a human being.
I really feel sorry for people who haven't experienced that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, I have to say, you know, I told you about how I felt jealous. That has been a big walk in my life, or a turnaround, you know. I came from a family that was very generous, you know. So it's not like I didn't know that.
Yeah. But I'm jealous, but I'm jealous of you. Every time you leave and you go to Uganda and you're surrounded by, you know, these human beings that are recipients not just of wealth, but they're recipients of the attention and the addressing of their needs, and you are able to facilitate that. You're able to flow that channel. I get jealous of you.
Well, come along.
I know.
Yeah, it is really kind of hard to come home.
I would imagine.
Of course, I want to come home in other ways.
Yeah.
It's just very lonely at home.
Oh, yeah,
Very, very lonely.
yeah.
How did you get involved with Uganda?
It's a long story, but I'll give you the real short version. And 2003, my husband and I and another couple that we were friends with from our church up here, we were already down in Brigantine, but they were still up here, decided that we were going to go on a safari to East Africa. And we spent most of our time in Kenya, and then we wanted to go see the gorillas in Uganda. So one of our friends told us that she had been in Uganda and she wanted us to visit this particular village. And it wasn't very far off the highway that we were going on anyway. So we did. And the village school had kids, like 700 of them lined up outside waiting for us all day long. They were waiting. And when we got there, they put on this wonderful welcome for us, just a huge clap, organized, like rhythm clapping for us, and then speeches and gospel choir singing to us, and a tour of the village, so forth. And, all four of us were just smitten. Really, really had our hearts broken by it. And, we can do something. It takes so little to do a little something. I mean, the kids were dressed in rags. They had no shoes. They had no energy. It was really sad. But then we found out the kids in town, this is a village just a mile and a half or so out of town, kids in town were worse off because their families didn't have land to grow any food on. And, they had nothing and no way of getting anything.
So what did you do?
So we ended up starting a daycare center in town with some of the people that we had met on that short visit. And then that grew. Once they were out of nursery school, they wanted us to continue to, primary 1, and then primary 2, and then primary 3, and then primary 4. And then every year it was another grade. And we now have all the way through, it's S6. They have A levels, the British system. It's O levels and A levels for high school. So it's all the way to like 20-year-olds now.
Did you hire the teachers?
Well, we partnered with the people who run it over there, the Ugandans that we met, and, some of their friends and people that they brought in to work on it. One of the they call him the CEO now over there for the project, was just a very young man teaching at that school when we met him. But he had gotten a degree in business from McCary, but couldn't get a job, so he was teaching.
Wow.
And he loves kids, and he was really good at teaching. But he's also good in business, which is necessary for what we're doing. And the very first head teacher we had is still with us, so it's got some good history.
The number of students now?
Almost 700.
Wow. And what did they do after the 6th grade?
Oh, they go to university usually. After they are 20 years, 19, 20 years old by then. And that A levels is almost like good old, what we used to call junior college, that kind of thing. It's university almost. But told me that it's like advanced placement courses in high school, but it's like college courses.
And you have to pass some ability test to get to that level, right? I mean, if you don't pass at a certain level, then you go to like
And you don't go to
vocational,
A levels,
right? You
no.
go to vocational training or something, right?
Yeah, if you don't get a certain level of passing in the O levels at the end of O levels, which is 4 years, then you probably will go, to plumbing or catering or secretarial or something like that. Then A levels are really heading more for either university or teaching, which isn't exactly university, but diploma courses, they call them, some of them. Yeah, it's all different system, which we had to learn a lot about that too.
And where do you get your supplies from, and books and things like that?
Oh, right there. I mean, they buy them. It's the government dictates the curriculum.
Does the government offer any support, financial support? Right.
I guess that's a no.
Good, good.
No, they actually tax us. So, that's why I'm laughing. It's it's really the opposite. Once in a while, they send some textbooks our way.
Wow.
So they set the curriculum, but don't offer any type of support.
That's right.
Right. Wow. 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 So
They have
it's,
their own schools to support,
yeah. So how, like, again, the miracle of modern society, of contemporary society, is that the life we live here moved, I don't know how many thousands of miles away, and our giving here can literally become 5-6 times the value as it travels there.
Right.
It's phenomenal. And so
It is
it
phenomenal.
teaches the relativity of wealth,
Yeah,
complete relativity of wealth.
it is.
And
The only thing there that costs, disproportionately more are things that have to be imported, like computers and things like that. They're what you pay here with American dollars. but
Wow.
You're trying to buy them with shillings, and that's hard.
So who is financing all of this? Are there different?
Well, our organization, which is called Real Partners Uganda, finances almost 90% of what. Yeah. Fortunately, the man friend of ours was a wills and estates lawyer in New York City for some big firm that has, not such a big firm, but a big enough firm that had some really, really well-off people who had foundations, and he is able to get money from those foundations, which helps a lot.
Wow.
But that's not half of our money, but it's close to half.
Yeah.
Yeah. The rest comes from people like Barbara and Lou and so many others.
It just shows that wealthy people can do good,
Yeah.
which I'm trying to remind myself every day. But but it's a matter of, again, I guess, our relationship to money and what does it mean and how do we look at it and how do we use it?
I always like to tell stories about how, life suspends these realities in front of me all the time. And then I just tilt my head and go, huh. But I had a guy in one of the first churches I served, and he was quite wealthy. His father had started a printing press with tricolor printing, and they grew into a massive, they printed the catalog for Sotheby's for their auctions, and the color of the arts and all that. They did all of that work, and he was so proud. He was proud of his house and his car and his clothes that he wore to church when he came to church. And he had this thing that he used to do where my office was downstairs in the church, and on a given Sunday morning when we were doing our pledge drive, he would come a little early. He'd come down the steps and come down the hallway to my office, and he would knock on the door of my office. I could still hear it. And he would walk in, and he would pull out his checkbook in a really flashy way. You know, he just reach in didn't say a word, just reach in, pull out his checkbook, take his pen, and with a big flair, he would write a check.
Right in front of you, huh?
And if you watched it and you knew him, you'd think, boy, this is going to be a game changer. This guy is going to, you know. And I think at the time his check was $1,500,
Oh,
which,
for the year?
yeah, this was his. And I mean, I used to sit there and hear the reason it was so hard to sit still. Because there was another person in the church. She was a single mom. She had 3 kids. Her husband had been abusive of her, and she had gotten him out of the way, but she was raising the kids on her own. And she had a pretty good job, but it wasn't like him, and she didn't have anything flary about her life at all. She had an old beat-up station wagon she drove around, and, you know, she was often seen going to the food pantry to make her money go further for her children. And it was almost, I don't know, it was like a timing that God would arrange for me to see, just to see the craziness of human beings. Because it usually was, he would come in with his big flair, with his $1,500 whatever, and before the campaign was over, without anybody seeing it, without anybody knowing it, she would write a check for $5,000.
Wow.
And every time it happened, it made me weep. You know, it just, and I just can't, you know, you can't put that together in life. It's just, wow. You know, where does a person generate that kind of depth of understanding of what it means to be wealthy and what it means to be poor? Now, I will tell you, some would say this is karma, but it was only about 3 or 4 years into me serving in that church, he decided he was going to grow his business, and he bought out the only competitor in the United States in his business. And when he bought it out, he didn't know, but he bought a whole bunch of unpaid bills. And within about 2 months, his company went completely bankrupt. He lost his house. Because to do the merger, he had mortgaged his home. He was so confident. And so his life goes off a cliff financially, you know. And her life, she ended up getting married to a man who actually was quite wealthy and was able to then expand her, like, she didn't change her standard of living that much. But what she did do was she expanded her pattern and the wing's breadth of her giving. She felt like she had become rich so that she could give more. And that's, I mean, those two people, the contrast of those two people, and they lived not 5 miles from each other, and sometimes they sat next to each other in church, you know? And there it is, you know, where is wisdom? According to Psalm 49, the single mom was the wisest person in the world.
More wealthy as well.
And more wealthy.
Yeah.
Much more. And then again, back to that program with that sentence, she knew how to keep money in its place. She knew how to keep money in its place. So I suppose at some point I ought to go back and look her up and see how she's doing these days. But I think I know how she's doing. I do know how he's doing, and that is he's working a menial job in a printing press somewhere.
Really?
Really. I mean, he ended up with a massive, massive amount of unpaid debt.
Just at the end of my Bible study.
But he couldn't get a decent job.
He couldn't.
Yeah.
No, he couldn't.
Okay.
So
I mean, he couldn't file bankrupt?
he did. He tried to file bankruptcy, but there was. I mean, he had worked out some kind of highfalutin deal with, you know, how he was so confident about what was going to happen. He just completely over-mortgaged his life and everything that he owned. And then, of course, his wife left him. So, you know, she was along for the ride with the wealthy instead of the poor. So, I wanted to.
Very sad.
Yeah. So there's this, the other thing I wanted to say is, I don't, like, okay, so this is not a Jewish psalm. This is a psalm of wisdom, which is to be read and applied across humanity. This applies to every human being that ever lived, and the writer of the psalm says so. This warning about the wisdom of life and death, you can't take it with you, applies to everyone. You know, the pharaohs that built the great big pyramids and buried half the wealth of Egypt with them when they buried themselves, you know, and then they had, the women were killed and laid in the, of course, sarcophagus with them so that they would have these women with them in the afterlife. And you think, you just didn't get it, did you? Like, you never heard the song of life. You never heard the wisdom of life, which says, no, you can't do that. And when I preach my little sermonettes at funerals, one of the things that I always say with the most energy that I can is in the closing of the service, there is an old liturgy, and it quotes Genesis and says, you know, you are dust, and to dust you shall return. But then the liturgy says, we are all dust, and we shall all return to dust. And when I get to that part, I look up from my book, I put my arms out, and I try to look in the eyeballs of every single person who's in the room. I really take a moment and say, I'm talking to you. I'm talking to you because I don't know you perhaps, but I know this is true for you. So let this moment, here you stand, your loved one is there and you have to look death in the face and all the rest of that. So let it go ahead and finish its lesson to you. So that for the days that you have to live, you'll have a sense of what real wisdom is. Or you'll have a sense of what real wealth is. You know, what is wealth? If it isn't in the proper place, it's, you know, what was it? Was it Midas? Wasn't it Midas who asked to have everything he touched turn to gold? And then it did. Everything turned to gold. His wife, his children, everything. It's the deepest wisdom. What did you say?
What good was that?
Yeah, what good was that? What good was it?
This is all about money, but I was wondering about, maybe it is money too, but power seems like one of those things that is very similar in that it drives people, and it seems like that's, if they get enough power, they're going to be famous and they're going to live on and, you know, be very special.
Yeah.
Maybe they go together, I don't know, but it seems like.
In verse 12, it uses a phrase, it says, but humans in their worthiness. And that phrase worthiness is we gain power, we gain influence, our worthiness. It's not just about wealth, but it says our worthiness does not survive.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
And he is like the beasts. It's very humbling. You know, you're not going to be any more powerful than just the beast that wanders the field. You know, put that in your view as you try to figure out what it's worth to strive for all this power. This is their way, their folly, that of those after them who approve their words.
Words, yeah.
And I'm reading in 14, it says, but when honest people come to power, a new day will dawn. And that sounds as what you said with the mom who went on to marry someone else. She went on to do even greater things.
Yeah, and she's able to continue in her way of unleashing the power of money, but not accumulating. Not accumulating power for herself. She's not looking for that.
Because she was honestly doing it from the heart and wanting to help people, and God increased her to be able to help more.
Yeah. And she had the amazing ability to do it in secret too. So that so no one could sneak back and then give her what she didn't want, which was accolades and, saying what a great person you are. And, here I am telling her story because I'm 5 churches away, so I hope she doesn't watch this and then figure out I'm talking about her, because she would be so angry with me for telling this story. But that's all right. That's the privilege I get as a pastor. Yes.
You didn't reveal her name. So.
Right. No, I did not. And I didn't reveal enough of her circumstance for anybody to figure out when it actually was in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a museum in Naples, and it's changed names several times. I think and they have a sign outside now as to what the donors, and it used to be like the gold, the silver, whatever. Well, these I think start at 15 million, and then there's 5 million, and then there's 10 million. And then, of course, the museum or that room, and it happened in our church, the area, Lou, which is now the fellowship room and the offices, when that whole section was added on. I think it probably cost about maybe $70,000. So one person needed a good tax benefit, and he wasn't a member of the church, but his wife was. He was a member of a different church. So he gave the $35,000, but then he wanted it named after him.
Oh, okay.
So wanted it be the wing with his name. And so that was a discussion very early on, that we don't name anything. And actually, the big pulpit we used to have, I think someone had once put a plaque, this was in memory of, so, or this was given by, but, early on it was decided that's not what we're going to do, is put a name on everything, to acknowledge the great gifts of everyone.
Yeah, because it can become, especially, I think it's pretty, I don't know. It's hard because I just can't imagine somebody wanting their name on a wing of the church, Right. It's like, name it after Jesus if you got to name it after somebody, right? Like, you got to lift up the name that is worthy of the name. Wow, that's rough.
Yeah. But if you go to a hospital, Everything in the hospital's named after some, the bedpans, I guess, must need a person's name. It's unbelievable how, the ego comes so much into it.
Well, and that's, I think, especially because like the hospitals, the appeal is to this thing of trying to live beyond the grave, right? I mean, it's making a name for yourself or having someone. I walk down those hospital walls and I see those tributes and memorials to people who have given lots of money, and I wonder, who is that? And isn't that wonderful that they gave that gift and whatever? But again, it's very short-sighted, because a hospital is going to last for 100 years? And sooner or later, that whole part of life and world and everything will also be gone. I mean, you can think, again, that the Ewing Church had these great big sarcophaguses. Famous people would die, and they would put their bodies on shelves inside these great big, marble rooms. You've seen them. I mean,
Unbelievable.
yeah. And I think.
Sometimes, yeah.
Go ahead.
Sometimes the names are taken away. When you look at the Sackler family, for example, behind OxyContin, and they had given enormous sums to the Metropolitan Museum, and to Yale, and to Columbia, and to and they had names all over the place. And then, to their great, disgrace, all of those names were taken off. So, that's another kind of way of retribution, I guess, from above. I don't know. Yeah. But when you went to the museum, to the Met, it was the Sackler collection and the Sackler room, and and all of that was taken away. And a lot of these institutions then refused money from the set afterwards. So sometimes, there's a spin around too in what happens to wealth and to legacies like that. Yeah. So it isn't always permanent.
No. Well, and what is permanent? Really, what is permanent? There's nothing that is permanent. That's the wisdom that the psalmist is talking about. There's nothing permanent. Nothing. And so then the question then becomes, if you can absorb that wisdom, how will that change your life? How will that change the way you spend your life, the days of your life? If you can saturate yourself with that, the point that nothing endures forever. And so then what do you want to do? What do you want to do with what you have? And I always have these stories, but my grandfather, who I adored, he was the Presbyterian elder. He owned at one time 3 dairy farms that were next to each other, and so it was a pretty big operation. He and my grandmother, they ran the farms, and my dad and his brother and sister were there on the farms, and that's where I got most of my life on the farm. I went and lived there. I lived there for years, and I loved that farm, and so did all of my siblings and everybody. It was the great place to come and to gather. But my grandfather, without telling anyone, he was worried that having the farm and the need to decide who would get what and how it would be divided up, he announced that he and my grandmother were moving into a little Cape Cod house, which was up the road from the farm, and he basically gave the farm away to a very young and inexperienced farmer and his new wife. And he announced it we all came out to this big anniversary dinner for my grandparents, and everybody was really happy to be there. And then he got up and he made this announcement about he was giving all of it away. I mean, he got some money from it, enough to pay for the little house and, to get them through the end of their life. But, oh my goodness, I'm telling you, he said he did it because in his experience, families fought over the money. They fought over the land, and, feuds were developed. I thought, well, I mean, the experience will show he got rid of all the infighting among the family because now everybody hated him. Everybody was angry with him. How could you do such a thing? And, I could get involved in that feeling too. That felt like that was mine, that I owned a piece of that. But he just said he'd seen too many times where accumulation of wealth and land and all that just destroyed relationships. So he made this decision. I still don't really understand it. I don't. I drive by that farm now. I drive and I look at it longingly and think, Pop, if you just, maybe you could have made a museum out of it or something, but to sell it away to another family. Okay, that's what he wanted to do with it.
It hasn't been subdivided, has it?
Actually, my uncle was so angry that he felt, he had worked on the farm his whole life. My dad left and went to seminary, and my aunt, she had gone, married somebody else, but my uncle was still there. He was still farming. And he was so furious with him that after the announcement, he convinced my grandfather to subdivide the part of the farm where he lived so that at least he would come out of it with a house and a barn and enough, to be able to continue dairy farming a little bit himself. But that was done with lawyers. That was not worked out like in a friendly way.
Oh, wow.
But other than that, no, it's all still intact. All the land is still there. It's all together, and that one guy is still farming it. He's not a very good farmer, so he doesn't make a whole lot of money. But so I drive by and I think, there, my grandfather and my grandmother, they worked hard to build a legacy, and then and I see other families where they pass on what they have to their children, and then their legacy somehow continues. But my grandfather's legacy in that community is gone. There's nothing left of anything that he owned or all the work that he did. His name is on the foundation stone of the Presbyterian Church, but and there is his grave in the Presbyterian cemetery. But other than that, it's what the psalmist says, Him and everything about his life, my grandmother and everything about her life, has gone on into the ground where they sleep. And then, of course, in the Christianity, through the teachings of Jesus, says they will not always sleep. The day will come when the trumpet will sound, and all who have died will be raised. And the same God who drew life into existence in the beginning with one word, with just the word from God, everything that is was created. So if we understand that, then we will not doubt the recreation of the world when the time is full, when it's right. And C.S. Lewis says that, there's, I guess, billions of people by now in that group, right? And C.S. Lewis says that's what the universe is for. That's what the planets are for. They will be populated with all of the risen souls and bodies that will go out into the universe, and everybody will have a place, right? That's what Jesus said. There'll be a place for every single person. So, but that's a Christian point of view. In this Hebrew psalm, the only sort of carrying on of a person's name was to have a child, and especially a male child. And then usually you gave the name of the patriarch's name to that child, and so they lived on through their children.
Yeah, I still think that's where your legacy is. Doesn't necessarily be the children, but people whose lives you've touched.
Yes.
You say your grandparents don't have legacy. They have legacy through every story that you tell. They live on through all those stories.
Yes.
And they've touched a lot of lives as a result of that.
Yeah, and the lives that are touched,
So-
the lives that are touched, then they go on too to touch other people's lives. And so it may be a legacy that's not even named or understood, but it still comes down through time. It's still received. You know, why do you live the way you live? Why do you do what you do? Because of what was done to me.
That's so interesting, the word legacy, and what that, what that means, because it can be people, it can be stories, it can be mementos, it can be so many things, a legacy. Yeah, interesting. So you can leave a legacy in so many different ways, in other words. Sometimes a family will get around a fireplace and just hear stories that go there. Yeah. Or photographs, or paintings, or a particular artifact, a piece of jewelry. It's fascinating when you think about how do you leave a legacy? In what way? Yeah. Interesting.
And the legacy becomes the influence that you've had on a certain person who then goes on to have an influence with another person.
Right. Right.
Elaine said good night. She has to go take care of her sick dog. She put that in the
okay.
chat.
Okay. I saw words come up, but I couldn't read it, so.
You read very quickly.
Yeah.
I sorry, Elaine, and thank you for passing the word along. I knew that's too bad.
I think, I don't often do this, but I think maybe it might be good just to read the psalm again. So, let's see. Maybe, Barbara, do you have a different translation than what Judy read from?
Yeah, I have the New Oxford, the NRSV.
Okay, will you read from that one?
Sure. This is to the leader of the Kurahites, a psalm. Hear this, all you peoples. Give ear, all inhabitants of the world, both low and high, rich and poor together. My mouth shall speak wisdom. The meditation of my heart shall be understanding. I will incline my ear to the proverb. I will solve my riddle in the music of the harp. Why should I fear in times of trouble? When the iniquity of my persecutors surrounds me, those who trust in their wealth and boast of the abundance of their riches. Truly, no ransom avails for one's life. There is no price one can give to God for it. For the ransom of life is costly and can never suffice, that one should live on forever and never see the grave. What we look at the wise, they die. But fool and dolt perish together and leave their wealth to others. Their graves are their houses forever, their dwelling places to all generations, though they named lands their own. Mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They are like the animals that perish. Such is the fate of the foolhardy, the end of those who are pleased with their lot. Salah. Like sheep, they are appointed for Sheol. Death shall be their shepherd. Straight to the grave they descend, and their form shall waste away. Sheol shall be their home. But God will ransom my soul from the power of Sheol, for he will receive me. Selah. When the wealth of their houses increases, or when they die, they will carry nothing away. Their wealth will not go down after them. Though in their lifetime they count themselves happy. For you are praised when you do well for yourself. They will go to the company of their ancestors, who will never again see the light. Mortals cannot abide in their pomp. They are like the animals that perish.
What was the last verse that you read? Mortals will not abide in what?
In their pomp, like pomp and circumstance.
Oh, okay. So their pomp will not allow them to go on living.
They cannot live in their pomp. Yeah,
Right.
They're, I guess, being over and above everyone. That's the way I read it. They are like the
In their
animals.
riches.
It doesn't last.
Mm-hmm.
I love the word abundance in the beginning. And I think what is abundance and how do we use what we have when we have an abundant life?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. It's wisdom. One of the commentators made a big thing out of the fact, I think your translation had the word riddle. Barbara, up in the beginning, it talked about that life is a riddle, or, right?
Yeah, I will solve my riddle to the music of the harp.
Right.
It's in verse 4.
Okay. So,
Incline my ear. Yeah, I will solve my riddle to the music of the harp.
so that the commentators are saying that what this writer is saying is, come and ponder with me. Ponder with me this riddle, this reality about how we tend to think of life, but what life really is. What does it amount to? The contrast between the way we tend in common to sort of we grow up and we think, it's all about wealth or power or, possessions. But the whole time that's going on, there's another tricky side to the riddle, which says, no, life's value, the person's value doesn't ascend in those categories. It doesn't. And isn't that a wonderment? Isn't that strange? That's sort of what he's saying. It's just weird the way that is built in here. Because everybody dies. I don't know where it came from. I should probably figure out who it is who says it, whether it's, Eastern thought, who says that you never really die. You never really die until the last person says your name on earth. In other words, so if, I'm talking about my grandfather tonight. So my grandfather now is not like there's a level of his death which hasn't completely happened yet. But there will come a time when myself and everybody else, my name will never be said because my name will not be remembered in any way. All the people who knew me and remembered me will also be gone. And somehow this is a foundation from which wisdom for how to live life. That's the riddle. How do I incorporate that truth into a way to live tonight and tomorrow? How does that affect how I live?
But I also think the legacy lives on, even though the name doesn't, because I am who I am because of who came before me.
Yes.
And then whoever I have touched, whoever lives I've touched, then, or touched my mind, my passed, so I still think the legacy lives on.
Yeah.
The person doesn't, but
Right.
the legacy does.
And the name may not. The name may die. But,
Right.
but the
What happens-
actions,
What happens when you visit, when you go and visit your mother or father or grandfather in the cemetery, in that very act itself, isn't it? Creates a memory so that then you take that name away again from your visit to the cemetery or whatever. And maybe share it with your children.
yeah.
I mean, yeah,
There's a,
that, until everybody's gone, of course, but,
right.
but there are visits in between. Yeah.
But I do think the legacy of action, the legacy of what, what was done, does move from generation to generation, whether named or not. I just feel like saying this now because I've thought it a couple of times. My mom and dad are dead. They're buried. I know where their grave is. But in some ways, in the last couple of years since they died, they are more alive to me now than they were when they were living the last years of their life. I would also want to talk to my father, but when my father was living, it was very difficult to talk to him. Well, guess what? My father's died. Now I have no trouble talking to him at all. None. I talk to him all the time. and you know what? He never disagrees with me. So it's a funny thing. Life itself is a riddle in that way. So death is both an ending and it's also a beginning. It's also a freeing.
I could relate to that. My mom recently passed, and as I say, she pops in on me at will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like, oh, hi, Mom. I just find myself just talking to her. It's like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
No one else knows what I'm doing. I may look like crazy, but I understand what you're saying. She's here, more present now than she was when she was in the flesh.
Yeah. And
because I live up in Hamburg, she lived down in Jersey City. Although we talked often, we may not have seen each other as often. And now we just talk sporadically whenever she wants.
mm-hmm. I understand
which
that.
is very because she never called.
She's trying to make up for that. Now she's trying to make up for it. No, I understand that too, and I don't, it's again, like the commentator saying that this psalm points out the riddle of life. Life is a riddle. It's a riddle that has the underside and the mystery, and how is that possible that, you could accumulate all the wealth and power of the world, but it might ultimately just be meaningless. And then on the other hand, you might not have wealth or power or any of that stuff, but somehow your life will be filled with meaning and legacy and influence that you have in the world. How is that possible? It's not straightforward. It is not straightforward.
There are many forms of wealth.
Right?
Yeah.
When you say wealth, it's not just money. That's
Yes,
for sure.
that's right. It's not. And it's not even, people say, well, true wealth comes through family. And yet I know so many people who, you say, well, where's your family? And they go, well, you don't understand how family works for me. It's not about biology. It's not about that. It's about, family is about who you love and who loves you. And sometimes there's a connection of family and a wealth of family, and no one is related to each other.
Yes, my friends, we affectionately call ourselves our chosen family.
That's beautiful. It's beautiful.
We're chosen. I chose you as family. Your friends or family, you get to choose. Your biological family, you're given.
Yeah. And sometimes, again, the riddle
You
of
don't
life.
want the one to give.
Yeah, that's right. But the riddle of life is we spend a lot of time talking about how great family is, but there's an awful lot of the experience of people for whom their given family is a source of great pain and conflict and struggle, and they have to live beyond the confines of that. Yet in their chosen family, they experience the gift of love and acceptance. And isn't that a riddle as well? Isn't that funny that it kind of comes like that? That it's, you know, that there's that scene in Jesus' life where his brother comes to him and says, hey, you got to, like, knock it off. It's getting late. You need to come home. Your mother and your brothers are looking for you at the house. And Jesus says, my brothers and sisters are those who do the will of God. And I think in that way, Jesus is talking about this riddle. Who is your family? You know, who is it really? It can be your biological given family, but a lot of times, that's not how it works.
Right.
It's not. You experience more of that unconditional love from people who aren't biologically connected to you. So, the legacy of family, you know, and I still go back to, for all that I do not understand about life, all these riddles of life, and then all of the questions about life after death, I'd still come back to the ancients, the Hebrew, the wisdom of talking about how death is rest. It is rest. Rest for your soul. Rest for, you know, your pain is ended. And now you can enter into a rest. And then you let the New Testament, when it talks about resurrection, to pick up the rest of it. But that, you know, that death is entering into a sleep. A sleep. And I don't know, I just think there's something very beautiful about that. Mostly because I don't get enough sleep. And, you know, and the more people I hang around with who are of my same age, we get together and we talk. What do we talk about? Well, I didn't sleep very well. I can't sleep. You know, the medications for aiding people in sleep is the #1 medication that's selling in the United States. People desperately trying to buy a pill that will help them to sleep. All right, well, I guess we'll stop with that. I hope I don't send you home with too much to think about that brings about nightmares for you tonight, but we have at least been brave enough to engage in the riddle of life and death and meaning and money and wealth and what is asking the bigger and deeper questions. What does it really mean to live a life of power and wealth and accomplishment? And what is the deeper meaning of those things? Because they are not, the meaning of those things is not available on the surface. We all go down to the dust, all of us. And repeating that for ourselves, especially in the season of Lent, is supposed to be a pathway, a doorway into the deeper understanding of a resurrected life, of the life with Jesus and how to live. Living with our eye and our minds on the grave, in one hand, paying attention to that, and then holding on to the hope of what life can be and living in the power of God's love for us, which Paul says, in life and in death, I belong to God. You know, those realities don't sway me one way or the other because I live my life in hope of God's love for me, which is eternal. Love never ends, never ends. And so casting your thoughts and your life in the direction of knowing the love of God for you, and also then being a part of the love of God in the world is the best way to touch that which will never die.
Amen.
Okay, amen it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Nice to see you
Good night,
tonight.
all. Have a good week. Take care.
Bye. Have a
I'm gonna
good
try to,
night.
I'll have to check on Colette. I don't know where Colette was tonight.
Yeah.
She's
yeah.
usually here with us, but I hope she's okay. All right.
Take care.
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Melinda, it was very good to see you again.
I'm happy to be here.
Okay,
I'm gonna
good.
do better.
All right,
It's
good.
just been getting back into the swing of things.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
See you again soon. Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
And good night to those of you who tuned in. Colette, maybe you were watching, or maybe you will watch. I'm just sending my thoughts to you as well. Good night, everybody.